Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's Roshida coming to you from home. I am home for the first time since April. I'm coming to you live from home, and I'm so glad to see all of you. In the chat right now, I see Polly and Yolanda, Denise, Teresa, Kay, who are all in my YouTube membership. There's also Cupcakes season. Eleanor, Amber, Miranda, Stephanie. Hey, girl, hey. Dominique and Kay. It's so weird being here now. I'm like, oh, yes, I have a desk. I have a footstool to rest on. I've got my blanket behind me because I've always got a blanket. So, yeah, Monica Adelina is in Riverside, where I grew up right now. So, yay. Hey, Jay. Auntie Lou, Celeste, good morning. Hi, Francis. Hey, Roxanne. All right, so today we're going to talk about moving abroad and some frequently asked questions. But in order to do that, I need you guys to drop your questions in the chat, right? So let's start at the top because I never do this. I'm moving a little slow today, y'all, because people made me go outside last night after dark. It was fun. It was so much fun. But still, like, I wasn't in bed at 9 o'clock. Should have been, but I wasn't. Okay. If you're new here, hi, my name is Roshida Dowe. I am a career break coach. I live in Mexico City, and I help women take career breaks of however length they want it to be or move abroad. And I love what I do. And today is actually an extra special day because I just got back from 2 months traveling around. And this day is like loaded with work things. But it's all like things I love. So I'm going live with you guys now. And then later on this afternoon is the first day of the Get Your Next 3 Clients Challenge that I do with Stephanie Perry from Exodus Summit. So it's sold out. It's full. Otherwise, I tell you to buy a ticket. And I don't think there's no waiting list for the next session because it's very unlikely that we do it again this year. The rest of the year, we're going to focus on actually the summit, which is coming sooner than it's basically around the corner. It's basically around the corner. And so we do a challenge later on this afternoon, which we started. We have day 1 today, or day 0 today. Super excited about that. And then later on, I have group coaching. I'll lead group coaching for my Move Abroad and Career Break program called From Burnout to Bliss that you can find at RoshidaDowe.com. You can find all kinds of things there. And so I'll talk to the ladies from that this afternoon. So if you're in the program, you should already have an email telling you the time, the link, and everything you need. Those went out on Friday. And then if you're in Get Your Next 3 Clients, I'll see you later on today. Super excited about our first day together. And then I'm here with you guys right now. So super busy day of doing the things I love, which is basically talking to y'all and making your dreams come true. Like the Get Your Next 3 Clients challenge, when Stephanie and I created it, it was all about getting money to Black women who wanted to move abroad. So like, how do we make sure you have a business that can fund your new lifestyle while getting clients will help. If you need business, clients usually, a lot of times clients help. And so we do that program with that in mind. If you want to leave your job, if it's not satisfying you, if you want money because you just want more money, you know what I mean? Like whatever your reason is, we're here to help you. But now let's get to the questions in the chat. Yes, I did have fun last night. Sean was saying I had fun last night. I had a lot of fun last night. A lot. But also it was nighttime. So, hi, Nicole. Anita. Dura. Okay, so nearest question. Oh, you're in Nigeria? Okay, it's afternoon. I'm gonna star some of these questions so I can get back to that. Yes, this is an action-packed day, and I don't normally have action-packed days, but I'm gonna do it for y'all. Okay. I'm starring questions so I can find them. Oh, wait. Sometimes this program, the program I'm using just moves things and I lose where I am, and that's what just happened. So. All right, got some questions. And I have some of my own that I made up. But let's get to yours first. Okay. So first up is Near Shepherd. And it's, what are some steps people overlook when moving abroad? Everyone's going to overlook different things, right? Based on what their own life experience is. And I'm not sure that there's any one step that I could say people overlook, but I think people sometimes find a level of tension in their new life that they weren't expecting because they underestimate how hard the easy things are, right? Like last night at dinner, we were talking about just getting things delivered and how the same company will, we were talking about a bunch of different delivery companies, like different companies we've purchased things from, and someone's having like a great experience, and the next person being like, oh no, this was terrible. And that sounds small, but like, if your delivery man always runs late, and so they're like, okay, we're gonna leave your stuff on the street, you figure it out. And not like food, right? But like things you've purchased, right? Like it's too late to get in the building, so we're just gonna leave it here. Or you got to figure out how to install it, that kind of stuff. Those are the things that I think people underestimate when they're moving. Like, it's a lot of things when you're moving within a country, can be difficult. But when you don't know the country and you don't know what the norms are, and you don't speak the language, it can get challenging. And so I would say that figuring out how to do the smaller things will be helpful. Like my electric bill is on auto pay because remembering to go, it comes every 2 months, right? So remembering that I need to check my mail every 2 months because it comes once the bill shows up in my mail, I've got like 2 or 3 days to pay it. And if I don't, the electric bill I can pay late. Gas bill, they'd be like, no, baby, I'm cutting that off. You ain't got no gas. But there's just no process really to pay it late once the date passes. Or there is, but it's complicated. So I got my electric bill set up to auto pay. Yay. Although while I was gone, my cleaning lady paid it in cash, and I don't understand how that happened because it always auto deducts. So either I have a credit, which won't be a credit. That money gone. That money's gone. I paid my gas bill twice once. It was like it never happened. Unless you go down there and like argue with them in Spanish. Not doing it. But yeah, so my electric bill, I have it on auto pay. I have no idea how to get it off auto pay. I'm not sure how long. I know that I'm going to face challenges getting it off auto pay when I move here. How do I don't know. There's no instructor, there's nothing. Right. So it's that kind of thing. Like, yes, I figured paying the utility bills was challenging at first. I figured it out. I even figured out auto pay. But then there's gonna be another complicated step. Right. Like, and so like getting cable. Some people have had some challenges getting their cable turned off here, which happens in the US all the time, right? But doing that in another language, arguing with the cable provider in another language about why you're not going to pay no more because you told them to cut that bill out to stop the service 3 months ago, and they still haven't stopped the service, and that's not your problem. That's harder when you're not completely fluent in a language. And this isn't to say wait until you're fluent to go somewhere. It's prepare yourself for challenging moments. A lot of people see like, oh, they're over there in Puerto Vallarta living by the beach. Life is easy. Life is good. The big parts are generally really, really good and happy and joyful, right? It's the details where you're like, okay, now I got to figure out how I'm going to. I have no idea. I have no idea. No idea. Right? So those are, I would say those, it's not necessarily a step people overlook, but there is that there's a tension that arises when people aren't expecting these smaller things. A lot of places you might move to could be like death by a thousand cuts, where it's truly like, it's another thing. It's another thing. I got to find another thing. One of my friends last night had furniture delivered in boxes, and now she's like, I have to find someone to put it together, which would most likely be easier if she was doing that in her home community, right? But abroad and in another language, it's harder. Not impossible. She'll do it. She could even put it together herself if she wanted to. She knows this, but she won't. And I appreciate that. But yeah, I would say, remember that it's the small things that are complicated when you move abroad, right? Like there's the bureaucracy, and everyone expects that to be hard, or like, no, some people don't expect it to be hard, but it's usually a trick or two. But then there's, figuring out how to pay your gas bill when the gas company is like, it's overdue and there's no way to pay it. But if you don't pay it today, we're gonna turn off your gas today. You're like, what? What's happening here? So yeah, I think that's a big one for me, is that the small things are the challenging things. All right, I don't know what if this is a standalone comment, but yeah. My ATM card expired. My Charles Schwab ATM card expired. And I didn't realize it until I was abroad for 2 months. I was like, oh, so I can't get any money out of my bank account? Fun. Okay, whatever. And so I got on the phone. I talked to someone on the phone for 20 minutes, and she's sending my card to my address here. Cool, done. Then at my address in Florida, a letter showed up saying, you asked for a card to be sent somewhere else, but you need to call us and confirm that you want it sent somewhere else before we send it somewhere else. And I'm like, it was more of a 20. It was probably closer to 45 minutes because we did a couple of things. But I was on the phone with someone for 45 minutes, and we talked about why it needed to be sent to Mexico, not Florida. And y'all agreed, this is cool, no big deal. We got this. And now there's a letter in Florida saying I got to call y'all again to save us. So I'm not sure about the standalone, but that's my little rant about like, and I know it's for safety and security purposes, but like I confirmed my identity 17 different ways on the call. I did. Woo! So yes, there are always things. The gas company don't play no games. No, they do. They play many games. Their number one game is every time you go to pay your bill online, it's a different process. And that's after you can figure out how to pay it online, because they didn't have a good pay online system until like last year sometime. And now that they have it, every time it's different. They had 2 platforms, now only one works, and it only works sometime, and the bill's only available for a certain day. Traumatized. Yeah, I think some people do romanticize the experience, but I don't see anything wrong with romanticizing any part of your life, right? So like, yes, romanticize this experience, but not in a way that when it's not romantic, you're like, I hate this because I had different expectations, right? That's what I tend to see a lot from a lot of people is y'all talk about the good stuff, but y'all don't talk about the bad stuff. And I'm like, my bad stuff is like last night. Last night, I'm trying to leave the place. and the Wi-Fi in the restaurant is trash. I can't get any service on my cell phone, even though I had service on the way to the restaurant. Not I'm trying to leave the restaurant. I don't thingy. And I realized that the people, those of us in front of the front door, could not get service. But if you walked 3 feet over to the road, there was service there. And so we were struggling last night, like, why aren't our phones working? What's going on? Why aren't our phones working? And it finally just like we just walked somewhere and we're like, oh, now immediately we'll have service. It's that like that's why I can't list off all the 1,000 ways I have negative experiences, right? Things are challenging. When I want to go home, it's almost midnight, and Telcel works literally. It's smaller than my living room. Like where it worked, where there was a dead spot and where there wasn't, where there was service is not. It's lit here to here, like arm span width. And I was like, that was a problem. That was the problem. We just had to walk. But like, how would I know this is a dead spot and it's not just our phones tripping? Anyhow, like that's, I think a lot of times people don't say like, oh, you guys, if they expect negative things from people, a lot of times our negatives are small and very specific. Like if I made a video about how one time my cell service didn't work in Mexico and it was very frustrating because why is there a dead spot? And the restaurant's Wi-Fi don't work. Like what kind of like black hole of technology am I standing in that nothing is working here? Right? Nothing. The only reason I ended up getting home last night was we got on our friend's, her phone is a hotspot and she was using her US Verizon plan, but the Mexican cell phones didn't work. Like it's happened to me one time and it was stressful because it's late, it's dark, and there's no other way. The other way home is like 3 bus transfers. No, thank you. Right? No, thank you. Not at this time. And so just those things, like a lot of the things that people are like, oh, no one ever talks about how hard it is. It's like it's minutia, right? But our lives have a lot of tiny minutia. And so I can't tell you, no one's going to tell you all of those negative things, but they're there, right? And so, yes, if I made a video about how about one time I didn't have cell service, you would have like 1,000 people in my comments like, this is not fair. It's not an accurate depiction of the city. And just because you had one time, you don't know how to use your phone, you and your cheap phone, blah, blah. That's what my comments would say, right? Like, because it's just a data point, but it was a data point in my life that made my life more complicated in the moment. We were there like, how are we gonna get home? Literally, how are we gonna get home? What are we gonna do? What's happening? Figured it out. Small, minutia, but it's just, those are complications. Like, how do I get home in the city if I can't use Uber at this time of night, right? Let's see. I do carry 2 cell phones, but only because I haven't figured out how to get an eSIM in Mexico. I have to like go into a store, and if I have to go into a store, and I was supposed to do that since I think last September, and I have not gone into a store yet. And that's why I don't know how to get an eSIM in Mexico. All right. Yeah, the bad stuff is a little annoying, but it's not like for me, it's worth it to get away from the bad stuff in the US. But what I see is like an Exodus Summit the other day, someone posted, Shauna said, you have to go into a store. I set up for you. Yeah, girl, I know. I just haven't got into a store since last September. I know if I go into a store, they'll do it. But my other phone, I just clickety clack and it on the app, and I can re-up on my actual physical SIM. So the phone that has an eSIM doesn't have a plan because I don't need that. Any hoodle. There's a woman who posted an Exodus Summit the other day about she moved to either Nigeria or Ghana. And she was saying that it was really expensive. It was more expensive than she thought to fly around the continent. And I was like, yes, right? Like, yes. Flying from one place in Africa to the next is really expensive for everybody. And it's been that way. And I think it's intentionally that way, right? Like the airlines and the powers that be make it really, really challenging to move from one African country to the next. Is it inherently more difficult for her than it is for other people, the people who have lived in Nigeria or Ghana their whole life? No, it's not. Do they have ways of working around it that she might not know yet? Probably, right? They probably, because they've been living with this their whole life, these challenges, the structure, they've been living within this structure their whole life, they probably have ways of moving within the structure that create less tension than it's currently creating for her. Okay. But from her post, it sounded like what she wanted was for Nigeria to be her base of travel around Africa. And if that's what you want, right? When you move abroad, if your main goal can't be met in a way that is sustainable to you, then what does your move look like, right? If she moved to Nigeria because she wanted to explore Africa, now she's in Africa, now she's in Nigeria, like, I can't afford to go to the rest of Africa. What are they talking about? What are these numbers? What are these numbers, right? If the numbers aren't clickety clacking in a way that makes sense for her to do this, then does the move make sense? And that's why it may not be well worth it, right? Like, because her bad stuff, my bad stuff is one thing. Her bad stuff, which is it's not living up to her expectations, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with living in Nigeria. It means she thought it was going to be one thing. Unfortunately, it's another, right? Or she hoped it would be one thing and it's not that thing. Is it well worth it then, right? I don't know. Because what she wanted isn't what she's getting. And so I think that's part of it too, is like, yes, the bad stuff could be annoying, but it might be well worth it if you're getting what you want. Because if you move somewhere and you're still not getting what you want, then like, is it worth moving away from everything, you know? Maybe, right? That's a very individual decision, but you know, all right. Bum, 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 bum. Let's see, what else? I'm very hot. Hold on, let me turn on this fan. It has been like stupid hot in Mexico City the past few days. I don't like it. I'm calling on June to show up and do what June does. Oh, I unplugged my fan. Hello, 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 hello. Okay. Sounds like we should have a translator on retainer. It's actually like, I would say yes, that could be helpful. But I saw someone ask about language later on. Figuring out how to do it yourself, honestly, there's a lot of benefit to figuring out how to do it, or like figuring out the words. Unless you're on the phone, girl. I'm on the phone, like, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. It's a struggle. But, woo, all right. Yes, Mexico has PayPal, but if you mostly pay people in the US, keep a US PayPal account, because PayPal doesn't always let you pay a person in another country, right? So like I pay my landlord on a sister company that they own called Zoom, XOOM, because I can't PayPal my landlord. Their account is set up here. They can't do that. I can't. I tried to send I needed to send my bestie in Canada some money, and I couldn't, even though they have a PayPal account in Canada, I could not PayPal them money from my US account to a Canadian account. But I could send it over PayPal's sister company, Zoom. So yes, there is PayPal in Mexico. I can use it to easily transact with US PayPal members, but if someone has a account outside, I can use my PayPal account for anywhere to send money from my US account to other US accounts from anywhere in the world. Some places PayPal is going to be like, is this really you? Or is this fraud? Right? So you have to go through a couple extra steps. But paying people in other places is challenging. Like my landlord wanted it in their bank, which is why that's one of the reasons we use Zoom. And right. So when we talk about what's challenging, a lot of the local payment processing systems, I would say, figure out how people pay bills, figure out how people transfer money before you move abroad. That is probably something that is challenging as well, that most people don't think about. Like in Mexico, a lot of people pay by transferring from their bank account to another bank account, someone else's bank account. It's super easy to do. You get on the app, you boop, 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 and then you've paid, and they already have proof right there. You've paid for it. Like when I went to the furniture market, they were like, we will not take a credit card, but you can put money in our account. And I was like, I don't have a local account. And they were like, okay, well, keep moving. Right? So having a local bank account would help with that kind of thing. I still haven't done it though, but it would help. When I was in Senegal, everyone was the fact that I did not have, they use an electronic money system, 2 different ones, I think, but like Orange is one of the ones that they use. And so like I would go in a car to pay for something like a ride share. I think I've told you guys this before. In Senegal, I was there for a month. It was a challenging month because I wasn't living there, but I wasn't like just on like a vacation. Because a lot of what people do in Senegal for vacations is they hire a tour guide who's with them like the entire time, except for like when they're sleeping or eating or whatever, right? So they take them, they drive them around and do everything. So you don't have to they don't pay money for drivers. Well, the ride sharing app in Senegal called Heech, you don't pay with a credit card. You pay your driver directly. Okay, I can do that. So I show up with cash and they're like, well, I don't have change. And I'm like, no one had change anywhere you go. They were all like, just pay us with like Orange Money, which is their electronic payment system. And I was like, I don't live here, so I don't have Orange Money. And they'd be like, like it was just so like, one Uber driver, one Heech driver yelled at me for not having a Senegalese phone number. And I was like, I don't have a Senegalese phone number because I don't live here. But like yelled at me for not having a number. So like just those things, like knowing payment systems helps, because if I'd known that Orange Money that like not having electronic payment systems would be a challenge everywhere I went, because no one had change. Like you had to pay for things with money, but no one had paper money anymore. So yeah, payment systems. Here it's a bank, but you have to have residency to get a bank account. And it's rarely, I can pay for most things with cash or credit. Senegal, I was like, please. Tracy, it was 85. It was a high of 85 here yesterday. I don't want that. All right. Let me see. Oh, Astrid asked about having a preferred airline flying around Mexico. Air Mexico. If I'm going on a very short trip, or I know I'm only going to have like a backpack or the smallest carry-on bag ever. Like if I'm going on a day trip, I'll do Volaris, Viva Airbus. But if I have to actually pack luggage, by the time they start adding on prices, it's wild. It's wild. I don't do that. All right. Another thing to think about when you're moving abroad is historically, what is the exchange rate doing? What is it done compared to the US dollar, especially if you're making US dollars? The US dollar is significantly weaker to the Mexican peso than it was a year ago. So, like, my rent is hundreds of dollars more a month than it was last year this time. Hundreds of dollars more a month. And so, for all the people who've been, I'm not one of those people, but for all the people who've been like, it's so inexpensive to live in Mexico. Oh, it's so cheap. It's so cheap. It's so inexpensive to live in Mexico. It's just, you buy everything for like 5 cents. And it's feelings are getting hurt. Because the price of everything, like the base price of everything is going up in pesos. And then when on top of that, the dollar isn't as strong, so you get less peso for your dollar, and the number of pesos went up to begin with, a lot of things are significantly more expensive here than they were a year or two ago. And I think that's going to squeeze some people out. I have a thought around this, and I'm not sure it's fully fleshed out yet, but I'm going to share it with y'all anyway. If when you move abroad, your goal is to move and move to the cheapest possible place and to live in a place that remains inexpensive, you probably be moving a bit. Like the people who moved to Merida a couple years ago because it was super inexpensive, a lot of them are looking around now like, where else can I move to? Because it's not, or people who saw prices, like one of my most popular videos on this channel is a video I did with Colby maybe 2 years ago about her life in Merida. And I think she was paying some ridiculous number for a wonderful apartment, right? Ridiculously low number. And people aren't seeing those numbers anymore. They're just not. And so, yeah, if you're always chasing like the lowest, or like if your goal is to always live on like the lowest amount of money possible, you're probably going to be moving every few years. Because if you found a place that's inexpensive, somebody else is going to find it too. And the more people who come in chasing the same thing, the more expensive a place is going to get. So, all right. I mean, Merida depends on what you define as expensive. And what I'm saying is that, like, if your goal in life is to live, or like your budget is like 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 US dollars, you're probably going to be moving more frequently, right? Because unless your budget is $600 a month and you move to a place where you can live on 200, that's how you'll be able to stay in a place for a while. And extrapolate that to whatever number it is. If you move to a place and you're at the top of your budget, how long are you going to be able to stay in that place, right? If it's already the top of your budget and there's no room for growth in your budget, right? Because around the world, places are getting more expensive and more expensive. And so what a lot of people are doing is like chasing the next cheap place, right? Like, where can I go that's cheaper than this? And where can I go that's cheaper than this? And so I would say, if that's a concern for you, don't move to a place at the top of your budget. And you want, okay, if that's a concern for you and you don't want to keep moving, because every city that has an influx of foreigners, their prices just go up. There's lots of reasons that happens. There's lots of things to talk about. Capitalism, right? But it happens everywhere. All right. What are other questions? Jackie says, thinking of moving to Cuenca, Ecuador next year. How many months in advance do I need to start the immigration and planning process, packing, etc.? That's a complicated question, Jackie. And I don't actually know about moving to Ecuador itself. I know that there are a lot of people in Ecuador, and I think there is a group of Black expats in Ecuador, but would have a more specific answer for you. But I would say that for anyone who is thinking about the moving and having legal residency where they live, they're not just they're on a tourist visa, they want to actually live there, have residency, I would say start at least a year in advance. You might not need it, but you might, right? In Portugal, Halisi and Rick told me that their process, which I think for a lot of people was like 4 months, their process was 9 months. And not because there was something wrong with the paperwork, just I think they ended up on a bucket in someone's desk. And maybe that person was out sick. I don't know. Like their stuff, like getting an appointment just took longer for no apparent reason, right? And so, like sometimes someone's out sick and your paperwork's on their desk. So I would say give it at least a year, unless you need to move, like not just visit, but like move immediately once you get approval. And then you need to do more work on the timing. But I'd say definitely a year. I would say that you don't need to you don't need to start packing that early, but you do need to start decluttering early. You need to start getting rid of things early. This month in Exodus Summit, we are going to talk a lot about decluttering because it's super important and challenging for a lot of us. So you do need to start thinking about that part of the process. I would say as soon as you realize, even if you're in the US, you want to move to another city in the US, as soon as you realize you want to move, it's time to start decluttering. It's just time. It's always time to declutter. I'm looking around like some stuff here I probably need to get rid of. Let's see. All right, y'all, ask your questions. Let's see. Honey's asking, so I have to answer this question because I love Honey. How much have you saved since leaving the States on your cost of living in Mexico? I don't do an apples to apples comparison because last time I lived in the Bay Area, last time I paid like full living expenses was when I lived in the Bay Area in 2018. I'll say my rent is like half of what I was paying then. My rent was, and now it's right. And so just that for me, everything's a little bit, no, not everything. We've talked about this before. Things are, some things are expensive, some things are really expensive, right? And some things are not. It just depends on what things are in your life. I, compared to what I was spending in the Bay Area, I don't remember what my last cost of living was, but I'm sure, positive, this is such a hard question to answer. Okay, so not on the, and I'm not trying to be avoidant, it's just, complicated. On the things that I have to pay every month, right? Like I've got to eat. If there's healthcare, right? I got to pay for that. Rent and those kinds of things, I'm probably saving $3,000 a month living here over what I was paying in the Bay Area. But then I'm spending more money on like trips and things, right? So like it's hard to say how much I've saved. I don't know. But my cost of living, my costs have shifted, right? So like, am I spending a lot less money? I don't know. I'm spending on different things though. right? Okay, so Janae says for Portugal, there's no appointments listed this year in the DC consulate. And Portugal is a country where they tell you which consulate you have to go to, right? I think it's San Francisco, LA, DC, and another one somewhere in the middle. But they tell you where to go. So what you gonna do besides go where they tell you to? So if they don't have appointments, you just don't have any luck. Yeah. Okay. Back to the questions you asked. I'm leaving for Georgia to close my last storage. How do I pack a few small KitchenAids? The stand mixers, the base itself is so heavy. And so I sent when Adelia and I went through my storage in February. I sent one to my mom, the base of my stand mixer to my mom. And when she was coming out this way from Merida, when we went on this journey right now, she came here first. She was going to bring the stand mixer, but every time she put it in her suitcase, it just toppled her suitcase over. Like she couldn't get it in a suitcase in a way that like it wouldn't just be like, boop, suitcase fell. Because they're so heavy. So a few, girl, I don't know. If you're talking about stand mixers, I don't know. But one, you just got to like pack it at the bottom of at the base of a suitcase, like right over the wheels, and just pack things around it. And I think, do you need a few small anything, or is one enough? I will say that. So like, I like fancy kitchen things. No big surprise, right? I have a grill pan, a Le Creuset grill pan. And I was like, is it worth bringing? Is it worth bringing? Is it even worth bringing down? But the grill pan itself, I saw it in City Market the other day for over 4,000 pesos, so over $200. And the most expensive suitcase I paid for when I brought them down, I think was 180. I think I paid 180 for 2 suitcases, and the rest were included in my fare. And so the grill pan plus everything else that I put in the suitcase with the grill pan more than paid for, made more, you know what I mean? Like as opposed to buying a new grill pan down here, I have that grill pan, and right, like it was cheaper to pay for an extra suitcase than it was to buy the new thing. But then I got here and the other day I looked at my oven and I was like, I have a grill like now, since I didn't have my grill pan, which I really love. Steaks in it are just okay. I brought like a grill sheet from Costco, which isn't as nice. I don't think it does the same, like, I don't think it distributes the heat the same way. I wouldn't want to make a steak on it, but I had it and I'm like, well, did I really need the grill pan if I already have this like grill sheet? I probably didn't, but it's hard to get, like, when you're getting rid of all your things, it's hard to get rid of all your things, right? So, okay, I have the grill pan. I did not have to pay what's probably $225 for it. Instead, I put it in a suitcase for 180 with other stuff that I wanted to bring down. These are all choices you have to make yourself because they are not easy and there's no right answer. All right. Not a mom with kids, yes. Half of my KitchenAid is here. Okay. Half of my KitchenAid is here. The other half is in Merida. Half of my Vitamix is here. The other half is still in California. But they're closer to me than they were for the past 5 years. So I'm slowly working through it. Okay, so Astrid, I'm going to address your question and someone else's question at the same time. Since getting residency in Mexico can take some time, how far in advance should you start? Should I wait until I'm ready? Have move abroad money together? And then someone else asked, first, let me go back and star yours so I don't lose it. Someone else asked, Janae asked, what's going on with Mexico raising the financial requirements for temp and perm residency? Okay, so back to you real quick, Astrid, answering both questions at once. Every January, Mexico raises the financial requirements for getting residency. And the reason they raise it every they're technically not raising the requirements. What happens is that the requirement is based on the minimum wage, the minimum daily wage in Mexico, right? So the requirement is like, you need to have 5,000 days of minimum wage saved, something like that, right? Like it's a formula like that. I think that was the formula, but I could be wrong. So don't quote me. And so there's really, every year when they increase minimum wage, yay, great, right? Like people here should be getting paid more. But every year when they raise the minimum wage, it raises, that rising tide is going to lift all boats. Unfortunately, most people don't want that boat to be lifted, right? It's going to make it more expensive. The bar for getting residency is going to get higher every single year. It's gotten about 20% higher every year for the past 2 or 3 years. And before that, it was like 10% or 15%. So expect to see residency requirements to be 20% higher every year than they were the year before. Every year for the foreseeable future, which means if you meet the requirements now, I would say start your residency process now, because you might not. I don't know. This is not for you specifically, Astrid. This is for everybody. You might not meet the requirements next year, right? Because I don't know how much they're gonna raise minimum wage to, but they raise it every year, right? So if minimum wage is 20% more, then the requirements are gonna be 20% higher. And so yeah, so that's what the deal is with them raising the requirements every year, is they've been raising minimum wage, which is a good thing, right? It's a good thing for the population here. Unfortunately, and I know that you guys don't do this, but unfortunately, in a lot of places, you see Americans so focused on themselves that they can't see this as a good thing. Like, why? I have a video about the requirements for this year. Let me see if I can find it for y'all. And in the comments, there are people like, why would they make the requirements so high? Even why would they tell me I need this much money when even Mexicans can't afford this? And I'm like, well, first of all, Mexicans can't afford this is a very broad and inaccurate statement, just to begin with, right? And there's a lot of biases and assumptions in that statement, but okay. But like, it's for the betterment of the country that you want to live in. Unfortunately, it might mean that you can't live there, right? You can't get residency, but that is not the government going out of their way to try to specifically harm you, Joanna, right? Like that's not what's happening. No one's, I said Joanna. I wasn't talking about our Joanna. Random name, right? Like they're not going out of their way to harm you. This is not about keeping foreigners out or keeping you out. This is like, we're not going to go to these countries and be narcissistic about our needs and requirements, right? Like that's big toxic energy. So yes, the requirements go up every year. Yes, do it as soon as possible. As soon as you meet the requirements and you're like, my money's looking good, I would say do it. Be prepared to come to Mexico within 6 months of getting approved so you can do the second step. But the thing about Mexico that is different from a lot of other countries is that once you get residency, once you do the second step of residency, you can leave that country, Mexico, the same day and not come back until it's time to renew your residency. If you have temporary, and if you have permanent, you can stay gone for years. and they're not worried about you. In a lot of countries, you have to stay in the country for a certain number of days or months. In Mexico, they're like, you fill out the paperwork, have a nice life, right? So I would say there's very little downside in Mexico to doing the process early because you don't have to be in the country once the process is completed. All right, so let me get this. I'm gonna drop this link. The financial requirements. I see New York State they raised the minimum wage by 20% each year. That's amazing. Yeah, except that like last year the minimum wage was $8 a day. $8 a day, and now it's like $10 a day. A day. So yes, it's great that it's being raised, right? But there's a big informal economy here, and I don't know that the rates are being raised in the informal economy as well. I don't know, but like, yeah, $10 a day, which is why I'm like raising the minimum wage is a good thing because the minimum wage here, woo. It's also why, let's talk about this too. A lot of people talk about, okay, I see people in groups all the time. How can I get a job here? Baby, the minimum wage is $10 a day. What job would you do for $10 a day? A day. No matter how much it costs you to live here. And by the way, $10 a day ain't gonna get it. It's not the way you want to live. $10 a day is not gonna cut it. Right? And so I hear from a lot of people, how do I get a job on the ground? How do I get a job in Mexico? And especially not even just Mexico, but a lot of the countries. I hear people saying, I can't, there we go. How do I get a job there? And it's like, do you actually want a job here? Or do you not realize what you're setting yourself up for, right? Like, do you realize when you've designed this new life? I want you guys, when you're thinking about things like moving abroad, to have a plan, right? A plan and a purpose. Why am I doing this? If you need to make money in the local economy, to live in the country you're moving to, you need to do thorough research about the local economy. And that's a step people are missing all the time. I'm gonna say it again, if you need to make money in the local economy to fund your life in that location, to fund your life completely, you need to do intense research about the local economy. Because the other day, I saw in a group, this guy, he's a cook, he's here, doesn't have a work permit because why would they give a work permit to like someone to be a line cook from another country to come here as a line cook when there are like the Mexican Constitution guarantees its citizens jobs. That might be like there are probably some words that are missing from us. As a lawyer, I have to tell you, my disclaimer is that there are probably some context and some words missing from that statement. But I know that because I looked it up. And so why do you think you would get a visa to come here and cook when there are people here who aren't working and their Constitution guarantees them jobs? They're going to be cooking before you, baby. So like, okay, this guy came in, him and his wife. It was him and his wife. I don't know if they both worked at the restaurant or just him worked at the restaurant, but they found a restaurant that would hire them to work under a table so they didn't need a visa. They were getting paid. Now they were getting paid the same thing their Mexican employees were getting paid, right? So very low wage, extremely low wage. But when time came, they didn't get paid. The man who was like, yeah, I'm going to hire you under the table, didn't pay you under the table. Oh, shocked. I am shocked Shocked that this happens. Oh, he ain't pay you? What you gonna do? What you gonna do when you were working under the table and this man now was paying you like, I usually say peanuts, but baby, this was peanut dust. Maybe even like a peanut shell, maybe, but mostly like peanut dust you were getting paid. And now what? You agreed to work under the table, and now your money, you never got paid. Like, there are people who do it. There are people, especially in some of the beach towns, especially beach towns who want bilingual people or people who speak English. They will hire other people. They'll hire foreigners under the table, but you might want to actually find out that they pay their people and you're not the only foreigner working. Because that man, as far as I could tell, was the only non-Mexican person working in a kitchen full of Mexican people. They know how to get their money, right? They know they gonna get paid, right? Because if they don't get paid, they gonna go to somebody who's gonna get them their money, right? What are you gonna do when you're working under the table? What are you gonna do? And now you're here, you need the money, but you worked and didn't get paid, and now you don't have any more work prospects. What are you doing? If you need the money to support yourself, make sure the local economy can support you in the lifestyle you want to live. It was not supporting that man in the lifestyle he wanted to live. He was like, I can't believe I did all this work for that little amount of money. And then you did it, but you did it, and then you didn't get paid. Why? You ain't see the setup? How you ain't see the setup? Why would he hire you as a cook? Why? Unless it was to get over on you. Not like the head chef, like you in the back cooking, which is very valuable. I love me a man in the back cooking, trust, right? But if your name's not on the door, on the menu, you're not gonna get paid. The scam. You guys see the scam? I mean, folks who've been working under the table here in Panama. Good luck, right? Like it's gonna work out for some people, it's not gonna work out for some other people. That's just the nature of it. If you need the money, mm-mm, mm-mm. Yeah, local wages are not livable. Let me see. Fourth deconstruction. I see your comment about increases in minimum wage in Mexico isn't wanted by Mexicans either. Minimum wage is attached to government fees and fines. Some people don't want the increase since employers pay more than minimum wage. I'm gonna go ahead and bet easy money that there are Mexicans who want the minimum wage increased, and just as much as there are Mexicans who don't want the minimum wage increased. I'm always going to go to bat for the people who are most challenged by the situation. And so I'm gonna go ahead and guess that the poorest people in the country would like the minimum wage to be increased above $8 a day, because I know there are companies who are taking advantage, US companies in particular, who are taking advantage of those numbers, right? So yes, there are Mexicans who aren't going to want the number increased. Just like there are Mexicans who are like, tipping is a problem. Americans tipping is a problem because they tip more than Mexicans. And now people are going to expect more money. And it's like, Do I want to, in this side of the argument, am I going to choose the side of the people who have the money and don't want to tip? Or am I going to choose the side of the people who want to get this tip money? I'm always going to choose the side of the people who want the tip money, right? Like that's just not a conversation I'm going to ever have in a different direction. I'm never going to be on the side of people who have the money and don't want to leave larger tips. That's for me, that is never going to be the side where I align myself. And so in this minimum wage conversation, I'm aligning myself in the same way. I'm aligning myself with the poorest and those that will struggle the most. Glad we had that talk. Okay. How does one find a truly location independent job working on TEFL? Fear it won't be enough. So, our good friend Libria Jones talks about location independent jobs. I think that there is in the past few years, there has been a surge in work from home jobs, which are now, people are trying to do hybrid because they want you back in the office because real estate runs America. It runs cities in particular, which is why you have mayors like Eric Adams, boo, hiss, boo, saying things like, we need to get people back into the offices. Right? Why? Why do they need back in the offices? Because if not, those employers won't feel the need to pay rent. And without paying rent, the commercial interests are going to be losing money. And that's less money in donations to Adams and the rest of the politicians. And so we got to go to work. We got to go into the office because the downtown might die. If the downtown will die, and this is not for New York specifically, as far as everywhere. If your downtown is dying because laborers aren't coming in, and those laborers don't want to come in, do something else with your downtown, right? Put up a farmer's market. People come downtown for that. Put up a park. But capitalism and greed, right? Okay, so how do you find a truly independent job? Make sure that when you're looking, that's the priority, right? When you're doing all your searches. I know, but Libria will teach you lots of ways on different platforms to make sure that you're choosing the right thing. And then I would also say that when I hear people say this, I want you to take a step back for a second and ask some questions before you get to this question. So the question, one question before that would be, do I need a job? It's a question that we should all ask ourselves, right? Because the last time I had this conversation with someone, and it started with, and we were like brainstorming business ideas. And then I was like, wait, do you actually need this money, or do you just feel like you need to work? And she was like, I don't know if I need the money. Well, then I'm not doing this with you. I'm not doing this. I literally am not going to sit here and help you think of work you could do when you actually, if you sat down and do it, you might find out you don't need to work at all. Like, wait, come back to me then. Because she did the math and was like, my lifestyle will be so much cheaper where she wants to live and where she lives now. She probably won't need any additional money than what she has coming in from different sources. Okay, so and some of y'all are knocking on retirement's door, talking about another job. And you don't need the other job, but the idea of not working seems crazy to you. The idea of money not coming in sounds insane. And so it's like, I have to get a job, because what would I do without a job? Okay, so first question, do you need a job? Second, do you want a location independent job? Do you need the money? That's the first question. Second, do you want to work for yourself, or do you want a job? Both of those are very valid answers. Third, then I would say is, how do I find a job that will let me live not just where I want, but the lifestyle I want, right? Like if you my friend had a truly location independent job when she lived in New York. She could go anywhere. She went to Thailand because that's where she wanted to be, but she had to work in New York hours. So she was working from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. She was in her 20s. Do you, girl? I see it. I love it. Perfect. In my 40s, working from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., I would, no, I don't have that in me, right? So it's not just the location, but also the lifestyle to consider when you start your job search. What is asked of you, and can you do it from wherever you are? So my answer to that question is follow Labria Jones, see what resources she has, but also ask, like, never forget to ask those preliminary questions. It's live, Shauna. We're here. Okay, I see that question about decluttering. Boop, 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 boop. Do you know of any expats in Bangladesh, or could it be a viable consideration? I don't know of anybody living in Bangladesh that is not there for, or that part of the world, I'll specifically say, who's not there for work. Most people I know who go over to places in that part of the world are going there because their job sent them, like they're on an assignment there, or they got a job there. But I would take to Facebook and start searching like expats in Bangladesh, Bangladesh expats, search variations of that word, right? And you'll find groups there, hopefully. One good way, one thing to look about is that if you're not going for work, if you are, you'll find people at your job, whatever. If you're not going for work, places that have expats, places who import workers from other places, right? So like if in Bangladesh, there are enough companies there that there is enough companies there who bring employees from other places, that there is a community of them. There's also going to be a community of trailing spouses, right? The people who pick up and move over there for work will probably also have a partner who comes with them. It's very common, right? And those partners, if you're looking for the no work lifestyle in Bangladesh, those partners most likely know a little bit about the no work lifestyle in Bangladesh and the things you need to know, etc. Right? I can't speak to Bangladesh. I don't know anyone who lives there voluntarily. I'm not saying they're not there. I'm saying I don't know them. But I'd also like to know why you're considering that. It's interesting. All right. What's the best method to learn another language as an adult? Tutors, videos, just getting out there. What worked for you? Getting out there. I came back from the past few months where besides London, besides being in England and speaking English, most of the time when I was abroad, I was like, I don't speak that language. I'm so sorry. I don't know. I went to a attraction in Portugal, and the woman in front of me did her purchase in Spanish. Oh my God. So I know this man speaks Spanish. I walk up, I do my purchase in Spanish. And I managed to accent or what. He was like, where are you from? I told him the US. He was like, well, then you need to speak to me in English. It's offensive to be speaking Spanish. We don't speak Spanish here. And I'm like, you just spoke to that woman in Spanish. And he was like, yeah, well, I speak 5 languages. I'm like, then what is this conversation about? besides you feeling like you felt like you could check me about speaking. We don't speak Spanish here. We speak Portuguese. You just spoke Spanish though. Like, what? I shot him a look. He apologized real quick. He was like, I'm sorry. I was just joking. I was just joking. I'm sorry. I said, okay. Because absolutely, I just want to buy water. I would like water and chips from your stand. What I don't want is this. You're going to get in trouble if you're speaking Spanish it's fine here in Sintra, but if you're doing it in Lisbon, you're going to get in trouble. People don't like that, blah, blah. But you speak Spanish though, don't you? Don't you? I know you speak Spanish because you just, the woman in front of me, you just spoke Spanish to her. Hi, friend. Go to hell. Any hoodle. My point was that my point here, but the longer story was that I don't speak any Portuguese, right? Like I was Arabic. I speak like 3 words, done. But I'm gonna tell you, saying thank you, saying shukran in any country who speaks Arabic, they think that one word changes the game. Changes the game. Any hoodle. When I got back here, talking to an Uber driver here in Spanish, I was like, oh, I have it. I forgot that I have this language and these skills when I was in these other countries with none of the language skills. I got here and I was like, oh, hey girl, I'm having this conversation with the Uber driver about husbands and the number of them that I would like and what their individual purposes are, and how many he has one wife, multiple girlfriends. We're talking about all this stuff. Any hoodle. I think being in it, like submersing yourself, is the way to know more than the blue horse is at the door, which is what I learned on Duolingo. Right? Like to really figure out not just the words, but the words that are used in the location you want to go to. Like whenever I hire a Spanish tutor, because I've done it a couple times in the past, I make sure that they speak Spanish from the place I am going to. So like I want a Spanish tutor who's from Mexico City. I don't want a Spanish tutor who's even from Guadalajara, because they're going to say some words we don't say here, right? I don't want a Spanish teacher who grew up speaking Spanish in Costa Rica. And this is me personally, because there are a lot of words that mean one thing in one country and another thing somewhere else, or don't have any use. We were just talking about this last night, watching shows like, in Spanish. If you don't know where the writers are from, right? They might use words that you don't use. Like I was watching, I think it was Narcos Mexico, and they use a word. I'm like, nobody here uses it. I've lived here for years. No one. And it was another word for money, right? But no one uses it here. And it was the word they kept using over. I think it was Narcos Mexico that I saw it over and over and over and over and over. Almost every time they talk about money, they kept saying feria. I'm like, no one. I've lived here for years. I've never heard anyone say feria in relationship to money, right? Because whoever wrote that wasn't from here, or that's a word that they were using in the 80s, right? That they no longer use, and so it was accurate for the time in which that story took place, but not accurate now. So I think hiring a tutor that is from the place you want to go, or submersing yourself in the actual day-to-day, best way to learn, from my perspective. Also, I don't want to, like, honestly, like if I had an Argentinian or even a Spanish teacher, there are whole parts of a language that aren't used, like whole ways to conjugate words that aren't used here. It wouldn't be helpful. So a tutor who's from where you're going, or submersing yourself when you get there. And I also don't think you actually need to be fluent. I think you need enough words to know how to do a lot of things, but you don't actually need to be fluent. I don't need to know every word, right? Like when I first moved here, I was tired. I had a lot going on. I couldn't remember the word for rain. I know the word now, right? I couldn't read that day. I couldn't remember the word for rain, and I was going outside, and I asked the security guard about sky water. I was like, I don't. I think I asked him like, how long has the sky been watering? And he was like, okay. But he told me, right? I couldn't remember the name for rain, but I got to sky water. I don't need to be fluent. I need to know like the basics and be able to add the basics and layer the basics on top of each other. I don't need every word in any language. You don't need every word in any language, right? And so if you're waiting for fluency to make your move, you're setting yourself up. You're doing yourself a disservice. Don't wait for fluency. Like for a lot of us, right? There's no end in that game. That's just a procrastination technique. If you're like, I can't leave until I'm fluent, you're procrastinating. You may not. You're doing more than you need to do. You may not be intentionally procrastinating, but you're doing more than you need to do. You don't need to. Sky water worked. The man told me how long the sky had been watering. And he laughed in my face. But he answered the question, and that's all I need. You can laugh. You can laugh at me. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Let's see. Okay, I am going through new comments and questions. Would I recommend Mexico City or Puerto Vallarta for young single expats seeking to relocate? I like to visit Puerto Vallarta. But okay, so like, I think you have to think about who you are and what you want, right? So do you want an old foreigner? Like is when you say young single, is dating part of what you want? If so, who were you looking to date? Right? Because that'll play a role here. Yeah, so you said the same thing. Depends on what you're looking for. What apps do I use on a daily basis in Mexico? I use Rappi for home delivery of groceries and stuff. They'll even like go to pharmacies and pick up over the counter stuff for you. I use Uber, Google Translate, Google Maps. Didi is a popular one here, but I struggle with Didi sometimes. All of the American-based subscription services, I have a local plan. Like, that makes sense. Like, I have a Mexican Netflix, right? So like, they haven't started cracking down on sharing outside of the USA yet. So on my Mexican Netflix, there's no big deal with sharing passwords, not yet. I have Max, HBO Max/Max. I have the Mexican version, so I have all of those that I use. I think that's what I use regularly. I told myself I was going to get on a couple times a year. I tell myself that I'm going to get on Tinder every day, and then I get on Tinder for like 2 days, and I'm like, I'm not enjoying this experience. So, but yeah, those are basically the apps. Like I get, but you all know me. I like to go do stuff sometimes. So Uber or Google Maps for like the transportation options. and I eat a lot. So, and I don't Uber Eats as much as I used to. Now that I have the kitchen, I can do whatever I want. But I do order deliver groceries a bunch. That's about it. Like all the apps you would use anywhere else. Same thing here. Let's see. Yes. My former Spanish teacher from Chile living in Panama. Coming from Mexico and listening to her had me all levels of confused. How she pronounced words threw me off. Yes. When first time I was in Buenos Aires, I was like, what are the why are you making that sound with your mouth? Because that's not a Spanish word. That's not a Spanish word. Why are you making that sound with your mouth? And I'm just used to Mexican Spanish, right? And it sounds differently in other places. I don't like the way it sounds in other places. What are you? What? Don't make that sound at me. How is it 2 L's a ch sound? 2 L's? Ch? Go away. Just stop playing in my face. Did I see a lot of Black folks in Puerto? No, I saw a Black American woman one day. American or Canadian? I could tell. She wasn't from around there. We both gave each other the like, hey girl, hey, from across the street. But where we were, we didn't. But we weren't in Puerto proper. We were like out on the outskirts. And so no, I didn't see a lot. But even still, I liked it, right? I liked it. Have I ever used emergency medical services in CDMX? I have gone to urgent care. That's as emergency as I've gotten. And the urgent care options were excellent. But like, not an ambulance, nothing like that. But here's the thing. When you're moving abroad, when you're going to a new city for more than a month, I want you to know what hospital you would go to if you need to go to a hospital. Because different hospitals are going to have different policies. Different countries are going to have different policies about things like paying for care. Like, do you need to pay ahead of time? Do you not need to pay ahead of time? Like here in the public hospitals, you don't need to pay ahead of time. But the care you receive may not be the care level you expect. And so I know where the private hospitals are, but in the private hospitals, they legit like. I was looking at a post online. People were talking about hospital experiences and how every time they go to a private hospital, they have to pay off the entire bill before they let them leave. Like they're not, for a lot of places, you won't get any service until you pay your bill ahead of time. And a lot of other places, you have to pay the rest of the bill before they let you leave a hospital. And a Mexican woman was in the group and saying, this is not legal. They cannot hold you until you pay your bill. It was kind of funny at the time because she's like, no, they can't do that. They can't do that. And every single foreigner in the group was like, okay, but when I went to the hospital, they wouldn't let me leave until I paid the bill. So yes, this Mexican woman, who I think is right. I see her, she's a trusted source for many things. She's like, they cannot keep you in the hospital until you pay the bill. Every single foreigner was like, I hear you talking, but they wouldn't let me leave until I paid my bill. So, or if they did let them leave before a bill was paid, it was like a public hospital, right? Private hospitals. She's like, no, that's not, they can't do that. Can't, not allowed. And what actually happens in real life, different things. And so wherever you're going, know what the medical services available to you are, the public medical services, and know what the private medical services are. Have an idea about the different service levels, what you might need to pay, and have a credit card available, just in case. Although I went to a hospital in Senegal, and I could pay with a credit card in one part of the hospital, and the other part of the hospital, they were like, no, it says on the door, we accept Visa, but our machine is broken. So you need to give us cash right now. And I was like, I don't have a hospital amount of cash on me, right? And they were like, well, then Why would you come with that? And I'm like, it says visa on the door. Why wouldn't you have enough money? And I'm like, you said money in Senegal was really a thing. I don't know. It was a thing. Woo. I mean, sometimes. All right. Is it feasible to move abroad for the purposes of getting an advanced degree, master's or PhD? I see your correction there, Nancy. Nancy at night. Okay, girl. If so, can you recommend a country offering free, inexpensive tuition to Americans? I can't. Um, you know, there's some things like there's some things you're like, I just don't know it. Further education is something I have checked out of. I do not know. Mm-mm. Also, do you need a master's or a PhD, or do you feel like going? It's a great time to go back to school because for so many Black women, we just have an urge to get more education. Why? What are we gonna do with it? That's not the point, right? So many Black women go back to school to get advanced degrees when they don't even want to be working. Right? So if like you don't want to work, what are you getting an advanced degree for? No one gets a master's or PhD just to sit and eat snacks, right? I don't. I might have a master's in snacking, but I didn't need one, right? Like, so I would also ask yourself, why am I doing this, right? If it's because you want to work in a field, then I think that reframes your question, right? Because it's not about the country offering inexpensive tuition. It's probably about the kind of program. And then I think that makes your research a little bit easier. Like free masters in health technologies, right? I think that makes the search different if you know the work you want to do, so you know the masters you want to get. If you just want to get a master's or a PhD for little money, I would say, is it even worth doing it? Right? Like what's behind it besides like an incessant Black woman desire to like be better and know more. So yeah, what do you want to learn, girl? It's it's not a game. It's very how you learn Spanish and how you hear Spanish will very much turn you off of other countries. I'll go to some countries and I'm like, why are you speaking to me like that? Like don't like let's can we do English? I don't want to hear the words. I don't it's offensive. Like but of course you can't tell people in their own country that their Spanish is offensive because they think it's right. All right. Nancy says you'll probably teach. Do you need a PhD or a master's to teach? To teach what you want to teach, right? To teach what you want to teach. Do you need the PhD or the master's? Or are you filling time? My first time in Mexico, hatchback was an ambulance that picked up my classmates in a medical emergency. Yeah, girl. If I have a medical emergency that does not involve me like spewing blood everywhere, I'll probably be in an Uber. I'll probably be in an Uber to the hospital. Like if it's some kind of any kind of self-contained thing where like I have 20 minutes, and if I don't have 20 minutes, the ambulance probably ain't coming anyway because there's traffic on my street. Let's see. I went to a furniture market that was reselling old furniture. A lot. I talked earlier about informal economies. A lot of things in Mexico are recycled in the sense that, like, a lot of people aren't buying new clothes, right? There are a lot of markets here that will sell like secondhand clothes or shoes or furniture or that kind of thing. So like the market I went to was like a vintage market, but it's used furniture. And it was always helpful on the information front. Says student visa can be for learning stuff, but does not require a degree. Something to keep in mind. All right. Let's see. What are the other questions? Wait, no, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to need childcare when moving to Panama for my 3-year-old. I'll ask people, but I know already there. But beyond that, where to start? I know you're not asking me about where to start with childcare because I don't know. But if it's just moving to Panama and you want to talk about that, I think start joining the expat groups down there if you haven't already, and start really trying to understand people's lives, right? Like how they live. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Time is a circle. I don't know when. We talked about how if you see people in a profession and you don't like their lives, like they're ahead of you in your profession, they're 10, 15, 20 years ahead of you in your profession, and you can't find anyone whose life you like, where you look at them and you're like, I'd wear your skin suit, right? Like if you don't see anybody like that, it's probably not a healthy place for you to build your foundation and your future. And so I would say start looking for women in Panama where you're like, I'd like that life, right? Like you don't have to feel like skin suity about it, right? If you're not like, but like if you can't find anyone, I would start looking for people whose life you feel like I could step into this and I'd be comfortable, right? And then start finding out, where do you guys live? Where, so you have a better idea of like neighborhoods, right? If there are things you like to do, like say you like indoor skeet shooting, right? Like find someone there who's doing that and see where they do it, what it costs, etc. So you have a better idea of what your life might be like on the ground. I think what a lot of people do that I see that I want them to stop doing is going in groups and asking really vague questions and getting answers from people whose lives you wouldn't want to live. I see a lot of times people ask like, what do you do for work? No, what do you do for money? A lot of groups questions are, what do you do for money? Or how much does it cost to live there for a month? And the answers often come from people whose life the question asker wouldn't want to live. Right? Like if I don't want your lifestyle, I don't care what your lifestyle costs, right? For me, it's that simple. Like if I don't want to do the amount of work you do to make that money, I don't care what. So like ask the questions and look at who you're getting the answers from. Start there. Really pay attention. Like give yourself enough time that you're not going in a group and asking a question and getting one question answered and feeling like I've done my research. Like really start to like watch people and see like, okay, this seems like something. I see enough people who I think my life could be similar to that are enjoying their time here, and that I can ask them questions. Right? Like find your people and figure out who they are. Is probably my best advice moving forward. Okay. Let me go back to the live chat. Roxanne got the group for you. Every time I see someone chilling with Roxanne in Panama, I'm like, why do they get to do that before I get to do that? Why? Roxanne was like, I'm at lunch with so-and-so and so-and-so. And I'm like, I don't like that. I know those people. Why did they get to meet Roxanne? Well, I've met Roxanne, of course, but she used to live here. But like in Panama, they're hanging out and I haven't been there yet. What's happening? I don't like that. But y'all know I don't like a lot of things. Woo. Mm. Mm-mm. Okay, so Mary, friend of the channel, and who we interviewed on Exodus. Are you guys subscribed to the Exodus channel? Anyhow, we interviewed her there. We got a lot of good info from her. But she had a panel discussion that mentions daycare in Panama. I don't know. Y'all know I'm talking about kids. Not that I don't love them and they're not beautiful people, but like I don't know that life. Let's normalize not giving advice about things we don't know nothing about. I think that's another reason, another thing I see in groups where I'm like, someone will join a group and be like, okay, like ladies, I need to know blah blah blah, and here comes 17 men with answers. Normalize no one talking to you, right? Like when there are questions about raising kids, I'd be out here like, I don't know. I don't know, but there are other people who know. I might be able to direct you to a person who could have some info, but you ain't got to answer every question. So in groups, also make sure you know you're getting advice from people who should be talking and not people who should be quiet. Be quiet. You don't talk. You don't know nothing. What you talking about? Woo! All right. Mm, 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 mm. Can you see the confusion on my face? Come through with Adelia and Stephanie. When are Adelia and Stephanie going to Panama? Is this it? Let me check my phone. Maybe a message came in and I missed it. What's it can't be what you're saying that they're going to Panama. No, there's nothing. I don't I see a typo. I see lots of typos. I don't know what's going on there. Oh, you planning ahead, huh? Okay. All right. Because my phone didn't say nothing about a group trip. And so I'm confused. Y'all know how I am. Don't play with me. How are hospitals in Egypt? Girl, I have no idea. But what I will tell you, since I've been to Egypt, what I will tell you is that the infrastructure was less developed than I expected. Take that however you will. Now, it's been years. I went, I think, in 2012 ish. It was right after the protests. I think it was around then. The infrastructure was doing less infrastructuring than I wanted it to. So I don't know what that means for the hospitals. Like I said, it's been 10 years. Things could have dramatically changed. I will say that like Cairo, and I'm speaking Cairo specifically. Cairo specifically was less lovely than I expected. So that's a question for a local group. Find a local group and they'll be able to help you. All right. These earrings are from Target years ago. High Vibe says, you've watched a lot of videos of Puerto. I see why you love it. Yeah, I said in Matusnojos. I did a vlog out there, and I'll get it up for you guys as soon as I can. But it really was like, I said that same word 16 different ways. I don't know how to pronounce the city I stayed in, but it was really cute. It's where the port is. The Porto port is actually in Cute though. Would you recommend renting an Airbnb sight unseen for a month in Mexico City? No. I would, at the very least, have someone go and check out the neighborhood first. For a week, yes. For a month, no. Mm-mm. All right. We did this one. Igami has questions about decluttering sentimental items, books, journals, etc. The books were really hard for me, but we took them all to like half price books, and they bought them back for like half a penny on a dollar. But we made 2 trips to half price books, and every time we went, they were looking at us like, this is not okay. Like, why would you bring us? Like, literally, they were like, why do you have all these boxes of books? Because I do. Because I did. Because that's what was in my storage. Probably more than 20 boxes of books to half price books, and got like $13 for them or something ridiculous. But like, I kept a couple books that were signed to me. Ooh, wait. I just realized a book that I wouldn't have gotten rid of, but I don't see here. Oh no, I do have it here. It is here. Blues Legacies and Black Feminism, signed by the Angela Davis. I didn't think I was like, I haven't seen that from college. But except for like books that really meant something to me or that were signed, I was like, it's got to go, right? Like I have to, and that's part of it too, right? So like when you move abroad, I think part of what you need to consider is how much are you willing to pay to have a life like the life you have now, right? Because I know a lot of people who are like, I cannot leave my books. I'm like, that's cool. But how much are you gonna pay to ship them? And is it gonna be worth it to you? Right? Like I had boxes, and this is after I downsized from my house in Ohio. I had boxes and I had walls of books. We kept being like, how is there another box of books? How is there another box of books? Right? Like where did this come from? And I now have to, in this life, I don't buy books anymore. In Mexico, Roshida does not buy books and does not buy hard copy books anymore. I get books on Libby. It's an online library. If you join your local library in the US, you can check books out on Libby. I think most library systems are integrated. I either check books out, or if I can't check them out for some reason, I'll buy them electronically. But I don't buy paper books anymore. No physical copies anymore, because where? If I move again, am I going to do this again? I don't want to do that again. I don't. And so I kept a couple books. I think behind me, let's move this. That shelf and then like that one down there are all the books I own in the world right now. That's it. So there's nothing to do but to do it, right? And I'm not even saying you have to declutter your books. I'm saying that you have to do something with them. And so either that means make the hard choice and say, I love you books, but y'all all can't come on this journey with me, right? And if I need you again, I can get an electronic copy of you. When I brought my books in, we came in late night. The customs agent opened all our bags. Every time they saw a book, they flipped through every single page of the book. And I don't know if people are hiding cash in books or whatever. Like, I don't know what they were expecting to find, but I'm like, anything you find in a book that I haven't looked at in 5 years, I wasn't expecting. So let's do this. Like, I was like, I don't know, like page by page, they flipped through every page of every book I brought down. That's a total sidebar, but it was very annoying because I was like, I'd like to be asleep right now. They added like another hour and a half of time going through customs in Mexico City when we came in. Anyhow, think about, do you actually need this book or do you want this book? And if you want it, would you be okay with an electronic copy? If this copy of this book means something to you, bring it. But not every physical copy of every book you have means something. Like maybe the book itself you want to read again. I've reached if I want to reread it, I'll get an electronic copy. Because I can't. It's too much. It's too much. All them books, just make a choice. And I chose get rid of more than less, right? Just get rid of everything. Keep very, very few. Why are we in the books going through everything? What's happening? I don't know. But yeah, it's a challenge. And I don't have any suggestions besides like deciding the things that you're like, I need this in my life. This actual physical version of this. I need this for some reason. Okay, Coach Don Marie says, digitize your books and print it later as needed. Yes. My journals, I threw away so many journals. I don't know. What do they say? I don't need it. I don't know. Donating my books to the library, yeah. I don't think we could find because of COVID, you may have problems finding those. I think we looked at that as an option and we had a hard time getting rid of a lot of things. I'll just say that. So the more time you give yourself, the better results you'll have. Yeah, no, you're not shipping 8 bookcases. Because also, if you go somewhere and then you're like, you know what, this ain't really for me, but the state next door or the county or the country or another city is for me, you can move these 8 boxes of books again, 8 bookcases of books again. Like the only time I'll tell you don't worry so much about decluttering before you move is when if your employer is paying for your move. Like my employer paid for my move from Ohio to California, so I didn't downsize. Put everything on the truck. Put everything on the truck. Everything. Put everything on the truck. And that's how I ended up with my storage unit in California that was full of things that I hadn't even seen since I lived in Ohio since 2016. There were things, I opened them. I'm like, this has been locked up in the 2 years I lived in California after I lived in Ohio. I didn't look at this one time. I know I've never looked at this before. Since 2016. That's how that happened. I moved. Don't do that. Every time you move, get rid of half your stuff. Maybe 1/4. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Okay. This is a great question. Glass half full. When you show evidence of income requirements for temp residency in Mexico, do they ask you how you plan on maintaining that income when you move to Mexico? They can, and some places do. I know someone who went to the Boston consulate and they asked her for her copy of her letter from her employer saying that she, yes, did work there at this time, which is for what she's showing pesos for, and would continue to be employed there when she moved to Mexico. And I'm like, it's funny to me. It was not funny to her. But it's funny to me because I'm going to guess that the employee at the Mexican consulate who lives in the US and has probably lived there for a while knows that no US employee is going to write a letter confirming future employment, right? Like, unless it's your mama who was writing a letter being like, yes, she works here now and will continue to work there for years to come. Who writing that letter? Our at-will ass employers are not writing those letters. They're not doing that. And I'm like, baby, I know the person who worked at the consulate knew that you were never going to get that letter. I know. She had to go to a different consulate, right? And so some places will ask that question, right? Do they ask you how you're going to maintain it? But sometimes you just need a letter saying like, yes, I can work remotely. I work for this company. This letter from a company saying, and I'm allowed to work remotely. Sometimes will be all they want. Sometimes they want more, but you never know until you're sitting down in front of the person. And that's the hard part. The hard part about the residency process is that what they do in one consulate, they might not do in another. And what they do in what one person does in one consulate may not be, the person who does the processing on Tuesday may do something differently than the person who does the processing on Thursday. And that's just life, right? Like, there's no easy answer for that. But I would, whatever evidence I had of income, of meeting the income requirements, I would come to the meeting with some evidence that I plan on maintaining that. And if that's a letter or from your employer saying you can work remotely, that's what I would have, right? Because they're going to ask, like, they might ask you for something you can't get, like a letter from your employer saying you'll continue to be employed there. I was like, that's so trifling. That's like I understand that requirement coming from another country. But when someone in the US asks for that, you know, these employers, you live here. These employers ain't doing that. You got jokes, real jokes. Okay. We couldn't give almost anything out of the closet when I did my decluttering because they had too much stuff. I had a great IKEA couch in great condition. I could not give to anyone because everyone had too many couches. Goodwill wouldn't take it. IKEA wouldn't take it. A place, but took stuff for free and sold it for profit. This is not even like a nonprofit. They sold your stuff. They took your stuff and sold it at a profit. They wouldn't take. They're like, we have too many couches. We can't. There's nothing. Mm. Do you know if the requirements for Mexican residency differ for someone self-employed? Here's the thing. If you're self-employed, and something I've been discussing with Stephanie this year, is how are you going to show money coming in? Because a lot of people who are doing the processing of these paperwork are told to look for pay stubs, right? So as someone who's self-employed, do you have pay stubs coming from anywhere, right? Do you have self-employment doing something that the Mexican government will understand? I help women leave their jobs is not an easy thing to explain in Mexico because people are always like, what? So if this is what you plan on doing, if you plan on meeting the requirements for residency as a self-employed person, I would see how you can start receiving pay stubs and get them for like 6 months to a year, right? Like, do you need to form your company a specific way? Do you need to give yourself payroll? How do you do this to show pay stubs? Because honestly, that's the guideline says look at pay stubs. So they want to see pay stubs. They don't want to see income coming in and this came into your account on this day, right? But I would also say if someone is self-employed, it would be easier if you could show that you had the required amount of money saved, right? Having the money saved / invested is always going to be an easier conversation to have than I currently meet the income requirements. I currently meet the income requirements requires something from your employer. It requires other stuff, right? How long have you met the income requirements? Show me all your pay stuff. I have this money in the account, and I've had this money in the account for more than a month, right? Like whatever the requirements are, 6 months, a year. Like there's no more showing you need to do other than that. They're not asking you where the money came from. They're not asking any questions. They're not asking, will you still have this money tomorrow? If you have the money, you're done. And that's always going to be easier for self-employed people because a lot of people you talk to are going to struggle with the way you provide self-employment information. All right, let me get back to the starred ones already, and then I see some questions. Aloha from Hawaii, just joined the chat. Is there a complete relocation service to Mexico City? The Mexican consulate here left years ago. Mahalo for your videos. I don't know anyone who does like front to back relocation services, who does the whole thing. I would say if the Mexican consulate there left, you got to go to somewhere else. Like if you want to do the process, you need to fly to somewhere else because technically for Mexico, as long as you're not in Mexico, as long as you're in some other country besides Mexico, and you're legally there, you have the legal, even if you're on vacation, if you have the legal right to be there, you can apply for residency from that country. So it doesn't have to be, you could go to Russia and apply for residency at the consulate there, if they have a consulate there. I'm assuming they do. You just can't do it from inside of Mexico. So you can go anywhere else, but you have to go somewhere, I think. Sorry. And I don't know anyone who does, I don't know any services that I trust that would do a front to back full thing without you having to be somewhat involved. And like, because like at the consulate when I went in Miami, it was a full on interview. So I still had to be there, right? It wasn't just like I could hire someone to do it for me because they were like, the man wanted to test my Spanish skills, even though that's not part of the requirement. Like speaking Spanish is not one of the requirements for getting residency, but because he was a jerk, he was like, we're only going to do this in Spanish. And I was like, okay. And when like I didn't have the Spanish word for something, I'm like, I'm trying to get it, he would like snap at me. And I was like, you're making me pass a test that is not required. You having a bad day, huh? Is every day a bad day? You don't like this job? I get it, baby. I get it. But I need you to just breathe through this pain so we can do this together. Woo. Okay. Oh, wait. That's not what I was looking for. I was looking for this. They frown at 401k statements. So now I'm going to NOLA showing savings account funds. These are things you don't know until you get to the ground, right? I would give yourself a couple times. To get the right consulate because sometimes it's going to be easy, right? Like I gave investment statements, but not 401k. And the man was like, okay, go. All right. But yeah, it depends. I haven't heard that they were frowning on 401k statements, but you never know until you get there. Because what they did yesterday and what they did today could be bananas and papayas, right? Different things completely. All right. Let me see the other questions that we have starred. Did you enjoy your trip across different countries? And what do you think of Portugal? I liked Portugal. I see why people move there. I didn't get caught in its web. I don't think. So I was talking about this at dinner last night, and Adelia had just been to Portugal at all as well. And one of the things I noticed in Portugal is that as a Black woman, I felt visible there in a way that I don't feel visible here. Now, I there's some cultural nuances there, and I don't have them fully fleshed out in my brain yet. I will say that for Mexico City specifically, Mexicans who are from here are very good at minding their own business. Very good. Exceptional. Right? So they might see you and they might be like, what? Like they might notice you, but they're also going to go out of their way. Most of them are going to go out of their way to not look like they're looking at you. Whereas like I felt extremely visible, not like in a way in which I like, not like in an ostracizing way, but like in a way that like I am a woman and I am visible, right? Like you see like me and my womanliness in a way that I don't feel visible here. So that was interesting. It wasn't enough to get me to move because men, no. But I see the appeal of the places, even outside of the visibility. I see the appeal of the places. I really enjoyed Portugal. I think I enjoyed it a lot because I just come from Morocco, and Morocco was just not good for me. It wasn't it. And it was significantly warmer than London, which I'd been in before. It was nice. But yeah, I think of all the places I went to, Portugal, and specifically I think Porto, would definitely be on my like, I could go back here for another month. I could go to Lisbon for a month. I could check it out more. There's so much to do, but I didn't get to do. Our first landlord, no, sorry, our host in Lisbon was like, in a week you can see everything you're supposed to see in Lisbon and see some things twice. And I was like, well, after I was there for a few days, I was like, well, this is either we're seeing things at different speeds, like you see things at different speeds and I see them, or that was a lie. You cannot see all of Lisbon in a week, right? But I'd go back and do that again. I enjoyed it. I get the appeal. All right, next question up is, are they going to ask about an address in Mexico during the residency process? I had this address already. I already lived here. I signed it when I was on a tourist visa. I signed for this apartment. And so I had an apartment, an address I could put down, but I don't think anyone ever asked. But be prepared. Okay, so I think that when you go online, you watch the videos, you read people's posts about the residency process, everything someone says they experienced, you should be prepared to experience that yourself. And a lot of groups, I see people minimizing other people's experiences, like, oh, they asked you for that? No one's ever asked me for that. That didn't happen. Okay, but they've asked someone, right? Unless this person is here is lying to us, which why would they? They have asked someone. So it's better for people coming behind them to be prepared to provide this thing than, someone saying, well, they didn't ask me for it. You should assume, it's much easier to assume you don't get asked for everything that anyone's ever been asked for than to assume you're not going to be asked for it because someone else wasn't asked for it. So I would have an address ready, but I didn't need to provide on the part that I did in the US, I didn't need to provide proof of address. When I came to Mexico City, I did the part here. I brought a utility bill with me to show my address, but I don't even think they looked at it. But that was 2 years ago. Would they look at it now? Or a year and a half ago? Would they look at it now? Probably. I don't know. Bring it, right? And bring copies of it. But are they going to look at it? I don't know. The residency process in a lot of countries is just, right? Your experience is going to vary from someone else's. Yeah, so Kat says they asked in the second half of the process. They didn't ask me. But like that's when I would be prepared to have the paperwork. That's when I had it on me. I don't think I looked at it. Mm-mm. Yes, the second half of the Mexican residency process changes from city to city, day to day. Every part of the process is really just like up to whoever you're dealing with and how they feel. Okay. And I know that there are two different responses I see to this. One is, well, it's still easier than America's process. Yes, but we're not talking about America's process because none of us here want to go through that process in America, right? And so I am never one that is. I hope I don't come here and you think that the way I'm talking to you or how I'm talking to you is in a way in which I think America should be held up as the standard for anything. No, I don't think the American immigration process should be the standard that we hold things to. So yes, it is easier than it is in well, it's easier than it is in America. Like yes. In America it takes a year. Yes. All true. But America is not a standard by which I live. And so that's not relevant to the conversations I'm going to be having. Right? Like, and I say this as someone who was not born in America and who was an immigrant to America. I'm well aware of the processes it takes. I'm aware of what it takes to get residency in America, to get a green card, right? To become a citizen. I know those. I've done them, right? But I still will never use America as like the bar for good or bad. In America, it takes longer. Yes, America's trash. The American residency and citizenship processes are trash. And they treat other people from other countries really poorly. That shouldn't be the bar. The bar shouldn't be, well, they treat people worse in America. So it's okay that there's no what's the word I'm looking for? Nothing is alike in any of the places, right? There's no consistency anywhere. It's still better in America. Don't let America be your bar. Be better than that. Like, don't let America be the bar. Because if you don't like a lot of times what I'm hearing is that the American process is terrible. So why would you complain about the process somewhere else? I didn't make the American process. If I did, it wouldn't be terrible. Me? I love me some efficiency. I love me some yes or no. You'd be in or you'd be out. Boom, bam, right? Or the other thing I hear is, so I hear that like it's better in America, whatever. The other thing I hear are people who really complain about the process because they expect that they are going to be welcomed with open arms as an American, as a Canadian, as someone from outside. I'm leaving with Americans right now. As Americans, people expect that these other countries are going to welcome them with open arms. And so when the process isn't smooth and pain-free, they're like, why is it so hard? You should want me here. Why do I have to prove all of it? Why isn't it? And it's like, no. Getting the right to live in another country is not easy no matter where you are, right? And yes, we'd like it to be consistent, but it's not. And so you have to roll with that. And with love, I think that if the residency process, if the hoops you have to jump through to get into a country are so much that you do not, the process is too much for you, too complicated, too hard, you hate everything about it, that may not be the country for you. It may not. Because the processes in the country are unlikely to be any easier. I'm riding dirty in Mexico right now because I'm supposed to have some kind of tax number. And I'm like, more bureaucracy? Y'all gonna have to catch me in these streets, right? Like, now, I was accidentally given a work permit, which means I should have a tax number. Do I? I don't know. I'm not about to find out. Until someone hems me up and is like, girl, where is this? Where is your number? I won't be doing that. Until I need to buy until I need the number for something. I ain't doing that. Because I already know what the bureaucracy is like and I'm not interested in engaging with that. You say I need it, but you haven't told me why. catch me outside. Like I just, there's no, won't. But there's a lot of parts of life you can't do that for. I can do that for a tax number because I don't pay taxes here. I shouldn't be saying that I'm doing that because it's not, I'm really supposed to have this done, but it is what it is. So yes, if the residency process, if you're like, I cannot handle this residency process, if it's too hard, if it's too much, I would consider a different country. Because yes, it is a hard part, but it's the amount of bureaucracy is probably not any different than what your day-to-day thing is going to be. Let's see. What don't we have? You'll talk about different parts of thingy. Yeah. You can ask. Now, you're supposed to come to them when you change your address as part of the residency process. And so if you're using a hotel address or Airbnb address, you're supposed to update it. But I don't know who's doing that. I think a lot of people aren't. Okay, I think we had all the questions that were starred. If I didn't answer your question, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm about to go eat. Did we get it? Did we get it done today? Did you like this? Did you subscribe? You turn on notifications? Did you turn on notifications? Okay, so my mom the other day was like, YouTube never tells me when you're gonna, it tells me when Stephanie's live, it tells me when Adelia's live, it never tells me when you're live. And I'm like, it's because you turned on notifications for Stephanie and Adelia, but you did not turn on notifications for me, Mom. So if you're like, YouTube never tells me when Roshida's live, turn on notifications and it'll tell you. Hit the like button. Let's do this again. Okay, Constance, I brought my printed off statements and they were fine. They were not notarized. I think we may have had a letter, but like a printed out letter from Vanguard saying like, yes, these are a statement. May have had that. But I think we just printed off statements. The man didn't even look at them. He saw the dates and like the number, and that was all he looked at. Done. Oh, the SAT office here was walking around making sure people lived where they said they did. That's the tax office. So Zion Jordan J, where do you live that this was happening? I live where I live where I say I live. I do. But that tax ID number or whatever it's for, I got it. Baby, y'all gonna have to haul me downtown. And there's literally an office that I walk past a couple times a week. But there's always like a line outside the door. And you have to make an appointment online. That's after you make an appointment online, have the times, the appointments aren't available, and blah, 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 bloop, bloop, bloop. We show up, they don't have what you need. Anita, I see your question about Exodus Summit being in person. Probably not this year. Maybe next year. Okay, Zion's in Rosarita. That makes sense, but people will be walking around checking. I think the closer you are to the US, there's going to be more of that. Here, there's none. They're not doing that. If a taxman wants to come knock on my door, they can. I don't know what we're going to talk about. I about had a fit when I had stuff delivered here and I had to go through customs, and the way they charge customs fees, I was like, this is unconscionable. I mean, I'm gonna pay it, but how dare you? Like, what was it? From the day it was delivered, you paid a daily amount that it was with customs. But like, I didn't even hear from UPS that it was delivered for like 5 days. And so I was paying a daily fee. without even knowing that I was getting charged a daily fee without even knowing that my package was here. And then there was nothing you could do about it. And then the math you got on one form wasn't the final math because then there was more math. None of the numbers matched. I can't imagine doing taxes here. No, thank you. Cassandra, if I want to travel to French Polynesia, Madrid, and Portugal in 1 year, how much money would I need? 3 trips from USA, 15K. That is an impossible to answer question because I don't know how. Could you do 3 trips to those places for 15,000? I think you could. Do you want to? I don't know, right? Like, do you? Money's never really the question in my mind. That's going to sound crazy, I know. But money's never really the question. The question is, with the amount that I want to pay, am I going to enjoy that experience? Right? So, like, yes, you could try. I'm sure you could travel to all 3 of those places in 1 year, especially if you did Madrid and Portugal on the same trip. If you do 3 different trips, okay. But like, those are probably going to be trips in coach, not first. Cool, right? I'm flying coach a long time. It's fine. No big deal. But is that what you want, right? That's why I say like money isn't really what we're talking about here. It's what do you want to experience? It's how do you want to experience French Polynesia? You go to a lot of them islands. Like I was talking to someone last night when I was in the Seychelles. I wasn't necessarily like, I was in a place that some people think is very romantic. And I very much was like, I don't need to be with like a romantic partner here, but I would be like to be with someone who splits the expenses because this place is so expensive, right? Like a taxi into the city from like the resort was like $60. I'm not paying $60 every day, one way. So 120 for myself to go walk around. I'll be on the resort. I'll be walking down the beach past other resorts because I'm not doing $120 a day for a tap, right? So it all depends on what you want to experience and if you're going to get the experience you want for that amount of money. Which is why I say it's not really the money. It's can you get the experience you want for the amount of money you have? Do you want to be in Madrid for 3 days? Do you want to be in Madrid for 3 weeks? Do you want to be in Madrid for 3 months? Those are questions that aren't answered here, right? Like, because can't answer them because we don't have enough information. So think about your experience, what you want to experience, and then I would start pricing things. So like if you want to be in French Polynesia for a week, start looking at places there. Are there resorts? Are there hotels? Are there Airbnbs that would be less? Like, what are the ways that you can have an experience you enjoy? Because I will tell you this, when I went to my career break and I spent months abroad, I will say that there were places where I did not have the best experience I could have because I was trying to live within a budget that did not bring me joy. My budget didn't bring me joy. My budget did not bring me joy. And so I was like, yes, I'm here. Am I maximizing my experience? No, because I don't want to pay for a taxi. So I'm about to take this bus, which is going to make the experience twice as long as it needs to be, right? So that kind of thing, like what experiences do you want? How do you want to feel? And then start looking at prices, right? Because like if you want to stay in Portugal for a week and you're willing to stay in a hostel, you're much more likely to come in, right? Another 15K. If you want a 5-star hotel to feel how you want to feel, that's a different budget number. It's never really the like flat out dollars. There's so much more to that question. All right, Wendy, you joined the membership. Okay, so this week we're back in the YouTube membership. Thanks for all the members for being here. We're going to do our first Thursday back. I think this is going to be an accountability session. I think this Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time for the YouTube members, you'll get some information about it. We're going to do an accountability session. I'm going to start trying to do those with you guys. Looking forward to it. Okay. I think that's what Not what I wanted to do. Okay. Last question is from Nancy at night. How's the food where you live? Good quality, expensive, inexpensive? Yes. Yes. The food where I live I live in Mexico City. It's exceptional. It's a very much a foodie city. Um, is it good quality? It can be. It can be, right? But not everything is. Is it expensive or inexpensive? It's both. It's both. There's a lot of inexpensive food and there's a lot of very expensive food. You just have to know what you want to pay for. All right. 9 p.m. EST. Yes, Junket. You're sending love from your bed? All right, locating cozy. Oh, you're in Spain, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Alicia says the documentation required by the Houston office was really nice. It was helpful to email them to ask questions prior to the appointment. Yes, that is something that I didn't talk about that I recommend. If you have questions, email the office and see if they'll respond to you with your questions. They should. Will they? But they should. So email them, ask them questions if you have questions. All right. Okay, friends. I am going to go eat again because it's been 2.5 hours since I last ate. I'm overtime. All right. And then I will talk to you guys next week here. And the membership. Okay. So if you're in, get your next 3 clients challenge. I'll see you in an hour and a half, I think. Whatever time the email says, maybe. And then if you're going to get your next, and if you're in from Burnout to Bliss, which you can get at RoshidaDowe.com. If you're in from Burnout to Bliss, I will see you at 6 p.m. Nope, 8 p.m. Eastern time today, which is 6 p.m. my time. You have an email. Bye, y'all. Talk to you later. Notifications on. Subscribe.